Welcome to the Talent Optimization Podcast, the go-to podcast for CEOs and HR professionals wanting to bridge the gap between the strategy and tactical implementation of talent optimization within their organizations. Through interviews, predictive index, and personal experience, your host, Tracy Shirk, helps you discover the facets of talent optimization from both a CEO and HR perspective to truly create the dream team for your organization. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Welcome to the Talent Optimization Podcast. My name is Tracy Shirk, and today we are continuing our conversation on coaching. And here's something that's super interesting about coaching is that it flows through every single area of our life. And as we talked about last week, there's a big distinction between coaching and mentoring, and the fact that coaching typically has somebody that is trained in that area. And mentoring is we're going to take somebody under our wing. We're going to show them what we have done throughout our career and kind of lead that path. And one of the things I'm super excited about today is to introduce you to Connie Whitman. And Connie has been in the sales game for her entire career, and how she grew up inside a business, fired herself, and then moved into this next stage of what she does now and is incredibly fulfilled by it, is going to inspire you about how you coach yourself and coach your staff. So Connie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Trace. I'm so excited for our conversation. This is an important topic.
Absolutely. So whatever you want to share about your background to kind of talk about how have you been able to create for yourself this amazing career in coaching others in sales?
Yeah. And this is, again, such an important question. And I love talking about this because I think at the cornerstone, coaching is such a needed skill for managers or supervisors, whoever. And I also think that the individual has to have skin in the game from a coaching perspective as well. So what do I mean by that? So my whole career, I've been in sales. Well, at some point, right, early on in my career, when I was in corporate, Trace, I was promoted, right, to a managerial position where I had a staff of, and at that time it was several hundred people, right, that I was responsible for the sales results for my region. And, you get in there and now you're sitting in meetings with the CEO and they're talking about the strategic plan. And I was young, right? I was new to this whole managerial thing. And I raised my hand and I said, I love the strategic plan. I love, where the organization's going. I have a question. Our people don't have the skill to do this. What you're asking, can't be done. And the response I got was, and that's why we hired you, go figure it out. And so I was like, okie dokie. So there we go. So I went back to my region and I started observing. And to me, that's the first thing in coaching, whether you're coaching yourself or coaching a team. You have to observe. So I sat there and I observed all of my managers, right? At the manager level, I was a higher level of management, evaluated all of my managers' skills. How are they communicating? What were they teaching and mentoring and sharing with their team to, and in my case, it was sales, right? What is the client journey? And I went back and I just started creating curriculum and I started coaching in meetings and coaching one-on-one. And I'm very competitive, Trace. My region had to be number one. And by the way, we were always number one. And here's the magical part, if you will, or what I learned early in my career. Me telling someone what to do, make more sales, make more calls. What does your numbers look like? I'm not saying any of that is not important, but telling someone make more phone calls. Meanwhile, they're not comfortable on the phone. I just set them up for failure. I'm more frustrated. I'm angry at that employee. They think they're going to get fired. And we go down this not so nice path where my perspective in coaching was, well, wait a minute. I'm asking them to make more phone calls. How are they going to do that? And so you go into teacher mode, which coaching, a part of it is teaching. And I would teach that employee whatever those skills were, whatever skills they had to teach or coach their employees on. So behaviors starts driving numbers. The numbers are a measurement. And I think in organizations, oftentimes, Tracy, what they do is they want the numbers, but they don't remember that we're dealing with humans. We're asking humans to change behavior to create the results we want. Numbers are a measurement. People are human. What do we need to do to help them move the needle and change?
Yeah. And really what I'm hearing you say between, hey, make more phone calls and we're going to hit this number, is this distinction between an output, make more phone calls, and an outcome is actually making the sales, right?
100%. Yep.
And that distinction is so often missed, right? So, you can work really, really hard and not get any results. The key is we want to get those results, and we get those results by coaching the beingness of the person of what does that look like? Because there's 1,000 different ways to do it. And something else that you said there that was really interesting is these are people. So what is it with the people that make them tick to get this outcome? And people are not created equally, right? Like we all have different strengths. We are all created perfectly the way we are, but we are not created perfectly for every role. And when we figure that out, we can ensure we've got the right individuals in the right seats. And so I'm really curious, your take on that.
Okay. So I want to comment. Let me,
Yes.
I want to take a step back. So you said something real important. I hope everybody heard this. All people are not created the same. So example would be if someone hired me for sales, right? And I have 39 years experience, and someone hired my kids who just graduated for college for that same sales position. Please don't, show me the product knowledge. Where am I going to go and find it? Please do not give me a class on phone calls. Please do not give me a class on presentation skills. You're hiring me for my level of expertise. Let me go and do it. Now, my kids who just graduated have basically very limited experience. So right there, you have male, female, you have different age group, you have different level of experience. And the most frustrating thing I see, Trace, when I deal with companies or I deal with business owners who have teams, I'm coaching them on the same thing. Why? Each personality is different of your employee. You need to communicate with them differently to get their buy-in from you. So that's another piece of the puzzle. So no two people are ever created the same. And coaching has to be dynamic and a dynamic conversation, not me talking at the employee. So in my world, Trace, I think the employee should be talking probably about 60 to 70% of the time. Once I fully understand where they are with the skill, whatever that skill, from point A to point B to point C, that skill growth, until I fully understand them and their background and their objectives and career pathing and all of those things, shame on me if I start coaching everybody the same way. You see the difference?
Yeah, absolutely. And that coaching, we use a tool called Predictive Index. And I know that you took this as well. But guess what? We are not all created the same. We're created perfectly the way we are. But with that, if we have somebody that's incredibly extroverted, they're going to want to talk through a challenge. And we've got a great story about that. But they're going to want to talk through a challenge, right? And if we have an individual that's much more introverted and introspective and analyzing, guess what? They're going to want to think through that, right? So we need to make sure that we are coaching them the way they need to be coached, where they're going to get the most mileage out of it, and then let them go do the job, whatever that job is, in the way that works. But every job has a need. And that's a key to this. As we talk about the Great Resignation, right? One of the keys is, do we have the right people in the right role? And then the second piece is the manager piece. Do we have managers that are coaching them in the right way to get that job done? And one of those keys is to have clear pathways and expectations of what the goal is and what those coaching objectives are. And I know you've done a ton on this, so I can't wait to hear your take on it.
Yeah. And it goes back to the observation. If I'm not observing you to say what your natural strengths are or what you've already worked on and developed, and I start talking to you about product knowledge and you've mastered that, it's insulting. It shows that I don't care about the employee. It shows the employee that, oh, by the way, I really haven't been paying attention to you. So you wonder why. And listen, Trace, there's so many reasons. You mentioned the Great Resignation. There's so many darn reasons why people are leaving in mass exodus, right? But I do believe that the relationship of the employee and the employer, the coach and the coachee, if you will, in our case, for discussion purposes today, if I don't have a full understanding of my employee and create a clear pathway and expectations and do that on a monthly basis, there's clarity in our communication. Now we can move the needle and get the results. But it has to be a back and forth conversation. And again, I believe in coaching monthly. You have to observe during the month, figure out, really take those observations. And then just another little caveat that I think is important. Whatever you're coaching the person on, stay on one topic. Oftentimes we want to bring in the kitchen sink and we're going to talk about this and we're going to change this and what is scheduling and this and that. And the person sits there thinking, well, I don't even know where to begin. We just talked about 100 things. So next month when I meet with them, I go, well, how'd it go? I don't even know what you wanted me to do. So stay in your lane, pick a topic, and then base your observation and try to pick something that the employee needs your help with, meaning they're still in development mode. They haven't created their own expertise yet. And then what you do is you observe it from three perspectives. And this is what's important, Tracy. I look at phone. Let's just use the phone as the example because I threw that out before. Based on right here, right now, in my observation, not future capability of Tracy, but Tracy right here, right now on the phone, what have I observed? Do you have the ability? And that would mean, can you get on the phone, make some phone calls, get your pipeline full, easy peasy? You would have ability, high ability. Or are you struggling, second guessing yourself on the phone a lot, right? All of those gyrations. Your skill level is on the lower side. I'm not saying none, but it's lower. Next one is motivation. Are you willing and do you want to do it? Yes or no? And then if yes, what tells me that? If no, what tells me that? And the third one is confidence. What is your confidence level with that particular task? In this case, making phone calls. So am I motivated to make the phone calls? Am I confident when I get on that? Do I even have the ability with that particular skill? Now, me as the coach, I've observed that. Now I could create some clarity in the conversation of the coaching session, and I could create some really good, clear, tangible, step-by-step execution to get the results over the next 30 days. They're going to be a baby step, Trace, right? It's not going to be 20 things that I need you to do by tomorrow. It's going to be, let's focus on this one skill as it pertains to getting on the phone. And then let's measure that. How you doing with that in 2 weeks, 30 days, whatever it is, depending on the skill level of the employee.
And one of those key distinctions as we go back to coaching and mentoring is in coaching, we're allowing that individual to come up with their own how, right? Because they have their own answers. And in mentoring, we're kind of telling them what that is, right? And so in coaching, it's all about, I know you have those answers. Let's come up with it. And a lot of the time, it's incredibly different than what we would come up with as well. And I know you know this from sales because I think you've taught it to me, but we've got to enroll people in what that is, right? So if there's a solution we have for a problem, we're enrolling them that this is the right solution for the problem. And it's the same thing with our staff.
Yeah, agree. And here's the other thing with coaching too, you have to do it consistently, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just, I'm going to observe Tracy for 5 minutes with a client, in my case, right? With a client, because I want to see how they're engaging and interacting. And is it a dynamic conversation? All those things. If I watch you for 5 minutes for one day and don't do another observation, again, I'm putting the employee at a deficit because then when we get into the conversation and then come up with an action plan, they don't even know what I'm talking about, let alone how to potentially remediate or help their situation, improve their development, their skill development, whatever it is. They're not even in the game with us because we didn't give them the time to observe first. So observation is really important. I know we keep going back to that, Trace, but it's that important because until I do that, it's very hard for me to get the employee involved because I don't know where I'm bringing them in, right? From an access point, from a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And at coaching, it's like when we look at coaching, we say coaching really to get to the best out of it should be on a weekly basis, right? Because
100%. Every day, really.
Yeah.
It's every day. Yeah.
And that coaching comes in to say, what is in your head that's stopping you from achieving these results? Because most of the time it is those things in our head that are like, hey, you can't do this, or here's all these barriers. And they're mental barriers. They're not anything that's out there. Like if you go back to the phone, right? The individual that is terrified of making cold calls, well, why is that? Because they have thought that cold calls are scary. So how do we overcome what that thought is that we can change that into a different thought that says this is a huge opportunity for growth and to actually serve someone?
Yeah. And the other point there too is the willingness, right? The will I do it? And then do I have the confidence to do it? Most times those two are tethered to the ability. So if I hand somebody a phone book and give them the phone and say, go make phone calls, Their motivation is going to be, I have to go to the bathroom. Let me do this. Oh, my mom just texted. Let me text them back. So we're going to be in avoidance because I'm not willing to do something I don't know how to do. And forget about the confidence. I get on the phone and I'm doing the humada, right? So again, shame on the coach for here's your action. I'm not saying action's a bad thing, but it's a bad thing if the person cannot execute what we're asking them to do because they don't have the ability out of the gate. Now I've killed their willingness, right? Their motivation to do it. And I've just killed their confidence. Now they're thinking I'm going to fire them. So instead of thinking, well, I empowered them, I told them exactly what to do. You're not giving them the right next step for them. And that's really critical. That's critical.
Yeah. And as that coach, it's giving them that space to brainstorm that so they can see what their own thoughts are and what's stopping that from happening in order to go and create that next step. Otherwise, they're going to think that the humada is much more fun on TikTok than it is on the phone.
Right. Exactly. And I'll share a really quick story about this exact concept. I had a VP. She happened to be a market manager at one of my clients, and she was coaching an AVP who was a manager in one of the offices and always been compliance, the employee had been with the organization for over 25 years. Good employee, very compliance, operationally savvy and very good at it. Well, fast forward, the organization's like, okay, we're missing opportunity. We're going to create a sales and service culture. Never had it at this particular company. So now I'm coaching the vice president, the market manager. She's like, I don't know what's going on. She was such a stellar employee. Now she's not. And, she's been with us for 25 years. She should know what to do. And as she was going through and telling me all the coaching she had done, I said to her at one point, okay, pause for a second. I go, okay. I go, you keep saying she has 25 years experience. She should know how to sell to the client. Have you taught her? Has anyone taught her? Has she been through the training yet? Because I was doing the training. No. I said, so you're asking somebody who's good at compliance and operations to now do a completely different job that she's never had to do for that 25 years. But you keep saying to her, you've been here 25 years. Why aren't you doing this? And what happened is, because then finally the woman came through my class. Now, remember, she was a middle-aged woman. She wasn't a kid, Trace. Comes through my class. And at the end, she shared with me, oh, this makes so much more sense. Now I have an idea of what I should be saying to my clients. Meanwhile, they were basing that she should have been able to do it because she had been there 25 years, not doing the same skill. So again, through observation, the manager, right, in this case, the VP would have said, wow, she has really bad conversations with her clients. I'm an order taker. Well, you're not an order taker anymore. The culture has changed, but the experience hasn't leveraged what the new expectation of the organization is. It's crazy.
Yeah. And when we look at that against personality styles, and I love what you just said, because this aligns so amazingly well over it, is her strength is in a different area of compliance. This is very process oriented, very detail oriented. I'm guessing it was probably a bit more introverted than extroverted.
Yes.
Not that she can't learn a skill, because you absolutely can, but what will she do over the long period of time with the right training and coaching? Because there's all those thoughts in your head that say you can't. And then when you're getting that external feedback that says you should is such a word that it can kill a culture, right? Maybe
Absolutely.
They should, but how have we gotten there, right? So when we talk about accountability or expectations, how do we scaffold and ladder that up and ensure that we're coaching in a way that moves them toward, and we're mentoring that at the same time? Oh, we have such juicy conversations here, Connie.
Yes, it's great. And it's to me, and it's funny, Trace, when a new client brings me in, I have some non-negotiables. I'm a very demanding consultant. It's kind of funny, but they have to use some kind of behavioral model for communication. I have my own, right? But some companies use DISC, Myers-Briggs, whatever. It's fine.
Predictive index,
right? Doesn't matter, right? Whatever it is, we certainly can use that, but you have to give the employees, I'm talking from a sales perspective now, we have to give employees tangible tools to be able to understand who is the human in front of me that you're asking me to have a really personal conversation with, so that I can identify how we may be able to help them with X, Y, and Z, given whatever your company is offering, right? Products and services.
So the reason why we do behavioral assessments to really support that individual, but also so the manager knows how to work with them and they know how to work with a manager, right?
Correct.
So one, it's fit to role, right? We need to make sure the job needs something. Does this individual have it? And that's one of the distinctions that Predictive Index has over DISC or anything else, right? Is we're looking at, here's the job assessment for the role. Here's who the person is. Will they do the job over the long period of time? And can they do the job? And then from there, we're looking at that and saying, how do we need to onboard and coach this individual to ensure that they're getting those quick wins early on to build that confidence to be successful and amazing in that role?
And think about it, though. Once they start playing with these kinds of models, right now, no matter what human is in front of me, I could start to see what I need to do to modify, to have a more dynamic conversation with the client, with a family member, with a colleague. So these tools really are, and that's why I make it a non-negotiable, because they're life skills that are so appropriate for coaching, but they're also appropriate for that client journey, right? That client conversation. So that is one of my non-negotiables. The other one is coaching. If they're going to hire me, because early on I didn't do this, and then they would say to me, they didn't have coaching. So people would come through my training all hopped up. This is great. They would come to me once, and then they would, the CEO would say, well, why aren't they doing the behavior? Well, who's following up? Who's holding them accountable? Who is going back and saying, what did you learn? How are you implementing it? Let's come up with an action plan. So after about 4 years in business, I said, oh, no, because my reputation, right? Connie's training isn't good. It doesn't change behavior. So they have to bring in a coaching culture with the sales and service culture so that we can train their managers to hold people accountable, but also to coach them to develop the skill from an ability, confidence, and motivational perspective. So isn't that funny? We grow and we learn, and it's always a successful situation because now the coaching is happening after the training, and now that's when the magic starts happening. Now we're lifting everything they learned in the classroom or on Zoom. Now we're lifting it into the day-to-day aspects of whatever their role is, whatever the employee's role is.
Yeah. And the other thing that's beautiful about that is we're lifting it into what their role is. But if we're using those tools, for example, like Predictive Index, one of the, I just did a training with a client this week. And, she had stated, hey, I'm naturally very extroverted. And I see that in my self-concept from my previous employer that it came up as very introverted. And I said, that is a key that when we start to see flip-flopping in our behaviors, especially if you're individuals that are very, very talkative, all of a sudden clam up and don't say anything anymore, you probably have a culture inside that organization that they're not being supported and they don't believe that their ideas matter. That impacts your productivity, that impacts your profitability, that impacts your sales, that impacts your employee engagement, and that drives the great resignation that we're in. That does not drive retention. And so this observation of, are we paying attention to the behaviors that are changing? Or if you see these individuals that are very, very steady and persistent, all of a sudden start leaving, you've got really big issues because that's really hard for them to do. Yeah. And so, in coaching, it's that observation, it's paying attention, and it's digging into what is this and how can you solve this? And where's that support that you need to meet the business results? Because at the end of the day, we need to meet the business results and be fulfilled in what we're doing.
But if we don't skill our employees to execute our vision, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. For me, we have to have a tremendous level, and I know you agree with this, Trace, of respect for the employee, but the capacity of what the employee can bring to the organization as a whole. And this is why if everybody listening, if you don't have a coaching culture in some way, I'm telling you, you're shooting yourself in the foot. The great resignation that's happening, if you're coaching your employees every month and you're really showing up for them and you're showing that you're understanding and you're showing them how to move their needle of skill development and success within their career because you're hands-on coaching them monthly, you're not going to have those people leaving the organization unless, and here's the big one, and I know, Tracy, you see this all the time, especially my corporate clients that have larger teams, right? So they might have 100 managers that I'm training, that I'm coaching on coaching. And of those 100, maybe 20, I think they're going to be really good coaches, man. Their employees are going to thrive. People are going to, in the organization, are going to start saying, what are they doing over there? Look at the results Tracy and Connie are getting, right? They're going to make a name for themselves through coaching, through their people, right? And building that team and that whole collaborative growth environment. And then the other 80, I think, wow, if the coach that's coaching those 80 employees are not good coaches, those 80 people are going to flounder, and then their whole teams below them are going to flounder. So that's another piece of the puzzle. Who do we have coaching our teams? And are they the right person to be coaching? Otherwise, you're saying, well, we're coaching. We did what Connie said, but the coaches are so bad and the coaching is so bad that it becomes getting called to the principal's office. And now you're giving people a reason to leave. My manager isn't listening. My manager doesn't understand because they're not skilled at coaching. So this is really a multi-level dynamic relationship. And I think important for every organization to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that coaching culture is key. And if you're curious and say, well, what is a coaching culture? The podcast that dropped last week. So if you're listening to this, just go back one, and the entire podcast is all about creating a coaching culture inside your organization. So, just know that there's some very specific kind of items that go into that. And coaching can be external or it can be internal, but our coaches have some sort of training and a framework of what they're going through with that specific individual to really support them. So I love it. So Connie, what's a takeaway that you have for executives listening in?
A couple, but the first one is, and I keep using observation, but I think humans, we're so instant gratification that we forget to sometimes sit and observe our own life as well, right? Stuff that's going on in our own life. So start with observation. The other thing is schedule it. If we schedule it, it happens, right? We all know that. So here's my other it's a time hack as well. Beginning of the year or wherever you are, right? We're mid-January right now, but it doesn't matter. It could be June if you're listening to the show in June. Schedule every employee for the remainder of the year. So example, Tracy, would be the first Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. Tracy, that's your ID every month. We put it in our calendar. We share it. You know when you're meeting with me. I know when we're meeting with me. I know when I have to do my observations. I know when I have to organize my notes to look at ability, motivation, and confidence. I have some ideas of how I think I could support you with action steps at the end of that. You have to come to the table with, and I hold my people accountable. There's certain things that you need to come back and report to me. What worked, what didn't during the month? What do you think, why it worked? What should we change, right? So now again, that creates that dynamic conversation. So observe, get your notes organized, spend the time, because you can't get into a coaching session and wing it. Do not allow distractions. Get it scheduled for the year so everybody knows when they're scheduled. There's no big surprises. We know on a Thursday, if Connie is scheduled on the third Thursday or fourth Thursday, that we're going to have Thanksgiving in there. So you can proactively adjust your schedule as well. And then the other thing is you have to execute. You have to hold yourself and the team accountable. You have to do it monthly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love those hot tips. So what's a key takeaway that you have for HR practitioners listening in today?
Yeah. And, HR, you guys have such a key role because you talk to everybody in your organization. Again, if I were you around budget season in HR, I would just start reaching out to the stakeholders within the organization and ask, how are you developing your team? What possible training, what support, what tools, technology, right? I would proactively every year have those conversations with the stakeholders, but I would also guide them into, here is some organizational strategies or expectations we're putting in place, like coaching. And what does that mean to your division? Who needs to be trained? All of those pieces of the puzzle. What is the form we're going to use if you want to use a formalized system so that we can go in and not gotcha, you didn't coach this month. Why? Versus now I'm talking to Tracy and saying, hey, listen, every month in, month out, you send me the coaching form proactively. I don't have to follow up. This month, what happens? Talk to me. Is something going on? Is everything okay? So now I'm having a respectful conversation, not, Hey, why didn't you send that form in this month?
Mhm.
Big difference, right? So
Right.
I would reach out to stakeholders, see what they need, make recommendations based on what you see is working in other divisions within your organization. All of those things. It's communication, right, Tracy? It all boils down. Have conversations, see what's needed, see how you can support.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your insights today. And if
My
you
pleasure.
are curious to learn more about Connie and the communication style assessment that she uses, but also the coaching and the sales training that she does inside of organizations, we do have that information in our show notes for you today. So Connie, thank you so much for joining us and sharing this perspective on how do we create that coaching culture to really serve our employees and to serve our clients.
100%. Thanks, Trace, for having me. Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Talent Optimization Podcast. You'll find more tools and resources for CEOs and HR professionals looking to bridge the strategies versus implementation gap of talent optimization at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. We've also created a free, valuable resource for you to begin bridging the gap called the Talent Optimization Foundation Membership Program. You can access it for free at elevatedtalentconsulting.com/foundation. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode to learn more about talent optimization and creating a dream team for your organization.